The WNBA is on hiatus for the next 4 weeks while the Olympics take place. And my question is, will the time off allow Caitlin Clark to rain great fury on the WNBA and make all the haters eat their words when the WNBA returns in August? But before we start, if you enjoy the content, then please consider subscribing to the channel and giving the video a like. All right, let's get into this. Now, before we start, when you look at something like Caitlin Clark, it seems to be on YouTube, you are either a hater or a lover, and you have an agenda and everything else. I do not have an agenda. What I love is numbers. And more importantly, I love players that put up numbers, but do it efficiently. After I did my recent video on Chennedy Carter, I took a few negative comments from Caitlin Clark fans, but I don't care, as she is putting up numbers, going for 17 points a game, and has an effective field goal shooting percentage of 52%. And Caitlin Clark, although her game is much different than her good buddy Chennedy Carter, she is putting up numbers too. She is sitting just behind Carter in scoring average at 17.1 points per game versus Carter at 17.2, and her effective field goal shooting percentage is just under 51%. It's ironic that they had their little stoush in the season because these two are arguably the two best guards in terms of value for money, as they are both on $76K, which is ridiculously low. The only one that comes close is Ryan Howard, who is on $80K, but she only averages 15 points and is just under 50% shooting. So still, Chennedy and Caitlin Clark are the best value for money in the WNBA. One last thing, I hope Chennedy Carter has a picture in her house of Teresa Weatherspoon and looks at it every morning and thanks her for giving her a second chance. Same thing as well for Teresa Weatherspoon. I hope she has a picture of Chennedy and thanks her every day for getting the chance to pick her up, because she has given Chicago the guard that they needed to be competitive this season. As well, I hope Kurt Miller has a picture of Chennedy Carter and he is kicking himself and saying, how the heck did I not bring Chennedy Carter in and give her a look, seeing that we were going to pay her $76K regardless, as her contract that Derek Fisher gave her was protected. Now, unlike Chennedy, Caitlin Clark is not set up to get her bag next year. She is locked in. Her and Aaliyah Boston are locked into the ridiculously low rookie contracts. Clark until 2027, Boston until 2026 as well. They'll be able to core them for a few years, depending on the upcoming labor agreement. I'm sure that Clark and Boston hate it, but if you are an Indiana Fever fan, you absolutely love it. As to me, it seems very similar to how the Las Vegas Aces were able to go on their run when they were the San Antonio Stars. They drafted Plum. 2018, they drafted Asia Wilson, and then 19, they got Jackie Young. And with those drafts, you have a cheap core, supplement that with a bit of Chelsea Gray, and the Aces have themselves a dynasty. Now with the Indiana Fever, I do not see them getting a #1 overall pick for the third time like the Aces, even though their cumulative winning percentage over the last 2 years is .364, which if they were in the lottery would give them the second best odds. But I don't see them falling out of the playoffs and going into the lottery, and the reason why is Caitlin Clark. When we look back at Diana Taurasi saying that she was going to face reality going against grown women, in truth, Caitlin Clark has already made that adjustment, as her numbers are identical or just slightly better than Diana Taurasi's. I mean, take a look. Taurasi, she averages 16 points, Clark 17 points. Rebounds 4.7 for Taurasi, 5.8 for Clark. Assists 2.6 for Taurasi, 8.2 for Clark. Field goal percentage from the floor, they're both shooting 40%. 3-point field goal percentage, Taurasi is slightly ahead of Clark at 36 versus 32%, and you'd only figure that Clark's is going to pick up as the season goes along. Efficient field goal shooting percentage, 50% for both of them. And I know some will make the arguments that Clark is a turnover machine at 5.6 per game, which is true, but her assist to turnover ratio, because she takes too many chances. She's Brett Favre, but her assist to turnover ratio it's 1.47. 1.37. It's better than Taurasi, who's at 1.34. And by the way, their usage rate is very similar as well, as Diana Taurasi is at 24.4% and Caitlin Clark is 26%. I know it's a big controversy that Caitlin Clark didn't make the Olympic team, and you could make arguments either way. I think it was a line ball call based on the numbers. I think if they wanted to put her in there, they could have, but they didn't. But frankly, I think that's probably the best thing that could have happened for Caitlin Clark, because she logged massive minutes at Iowa even before coming to the WNBA. She played 1,359 minutes, which was 13th all time since the 1987-88 season. So a rest, a 4-week break in the middle of the season for the Olympics is only going to do her a world of good and let her get her legs back. Her three-point percentage is currently low for Caitlin Clark. She's shooting 32%. She was a career 37% three-point shooter in college. If after the break, let's say she shoots 35%, her numbers are just going to go up. The other thing is, the tough games that they had early on in the season, that's done with. Their strength of schedule, it is 9th. So with rest and a soft schedule and a bit of vengeance because she didn't make the Olympic team on her mind, I really think Caitlin Clark is set up for a monster second half potentially. Now, the other question I am curious about, what exactly does Caitlin Clark need to do to get flowers thrown at her or respect from the WNBA community? Because it apparently doesn't seem like she has that right now, despite the numbers that she has put up as a guard in her rookie season. And even I have said previously, if Angel Reese in Chicago makes the playoffs and Indiana does not, then I believe Angel Reese is Rookie of the Year. And I think that's even more now that they traded Mabry to the Connecticut Sun, as the one hole you can pick in Caitlin Clark's game is obviously her defense. And when I called out her defense the last time in another video, Caitlin Clark fans came at me and said, you're wrong. You've got it all wrong. She's a good defender. And no, she's not, as she is usually guarding the worst perimeter player, and Indiana has one of the worst defenses in the WNBA. And once again, the numbers do not lie. Indiana is in the bottom 4 on points per play, points per scoring attempt, as well. Opponents' effective field goal shooting percentage is 50.7, which is 4th highest in the WNBA. So don't give me this Caitlin Clark is a great defender, but it doesn't really matter, as they will be able to beef up their defense through free agency if they're smart in their acquisitions. Or if their defense does cost them the playoffs, then they'll be lined up to take Dominique Malangala, the big French girl, who would pair nicely with Boston over time and would go a long way to help solving their defensive issues. But to be honest, I really don't see that happening, as I just think they're going to be too good unless they pull an almighty tank job. Or if Clark or Boston suffers an injury like Jordan did his second year, and that allowed them to tank to get into the lottery, although Jordan prevented that because he insisted on coming back, but they were still able to land Pippen. Anyway, now it's over to you. Do you think Caitlin Clark has lived up to the expectations, or do you think she's overhyped? And do you think she's going to wreak havoc on the WNBA in the second half of the season when they return from the Olympics? All your thoughts, Poison, all welcome. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a good night.